Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webcast. Today is Friday, May 8th, 2020, and today we're going to get a little bit into things that we miss and things that we don't miss at Episcopal, and a great interview with McGowan, a current economics and history teacher at Episcopal High School. Alright, let's get right into it. First of all, I want to thank everyone who tuned in to the first webcast and gave me great criticism and tips and compliments about how I did on my first go-around. Two things that I want to highlight that people brought up was, first of all, the title. I had a lot of great ideas for a title, but some great advice that I got from Mr. Goldstein is that I should have a title that can not only last the test of time, but also not be just individual to myself, but could also be picked up by someone else in case they wanted to do something like this. So I decided to go with my gut and call this South's Pandemic Externship Podcast. Because not only does it have a fun little acronym, SPEP, but also in case there's another pandemic and someone wants to start a podcast for Episcopal, all they have to do is change my name to their name, such as Brittany's Pandemic Externship Podcast or Joel's Pandemic Externship Podcast. The possibilities are endless. Second of all, I want to thank everyone who emailed me and told me that I was looking down at my notes way too much and that I should consider getting a teleprompter. I would love to get a teleprompter, but unfortunately, I probably won't get one. However, I will try and look at the camera much more this go around, and hopefully the more episodes that go in, the more comfortable I'll be with just talking off the cuff. Again, thank you for all the criticism and tips and compliments that I received on my first episode, and I can't wait for many more as I continue to improve as this May semester goes on. Now I'd like to quickly hand it to weather correspondent James Ferguson with the weather report.
Yo, it's me and Derek checking in from Atlanta, Georgia, and the weather's mad nice outside.
Mad nice outside.
It's steez. It's
steez.
mad
It's
nice.
chill. It's
Yeah.
super chill.
All right.
Thanks, James. That was tight. Now onto a little segment that I'd like to call Things We Miss and Things We Don't Miss. Now, when we all left Episcopal, I'm pretty sure that everyone probably missed every single little thing about Episcopal. However, as time has gone on, I've realized that there are some things that I'm not going to miss very much at Episcopal. So, I'm going to read off something that we all miss and something that maybe some of us don't really miss as much. I'm not trying to jab at anything or say that anything isn't worth being missed. I'm sure that there are some people that probably miss these things, but this might be an opinion that some of you may share. Things we miss. Sunday brunches in D Hall. I miss that. Things we don't miss. When the waffle bar would be out of chocolate chips. Whew. I hated that. Things we miss. Going to our afternoon options. I sure as heck do. Things we don't miss. Choosing between going to tutorial or being on time for afternoon options, and either way, we get a punishment for either not going to tutorial or being late for our afternoon options. What's up with that? Things we miss, working on group projects in the library. We get a lot of solid work done. Things we don't miss, getting kicked out of the library for being too loud. Sorry, Miss Singer and Miss Newton. I did that quite a few times. Things we miss, students giving great in-person chapel talks. Things we don't miss, that moment where we don't know whether or not we should stand up and clap. Things we miss, the candy in Mrs. Taylor's office. She always had something good in there. Things we don't miss, getting in trouble and going to Miss Taylor's office. Things we miss, ordering food late night on dorm. Things we don't miss when it doesn't even get past security. Things we miss, Saturdays with everyone on campus together. Things we don't miss, closed weekends. All right, now on to our interview. Today, I'm interviewing Michael McGowan, who is a current history teacher at EHS. Although some of you may think that this is his first year teaching on the Holy Hill, he actually was a teacher back in the early 2000s, so he knows a lot about our campus and what the culture is like at EHS. It was a really great interview, and I hope you guys enjoy it. Mr. McGowan, thank you again for agreeing for this interview. I'm super excited. How about for people who are watching who might not know exactly who you are, you just introduce yourself.
So I teach in the social studies department. This year I'm teaching modern world history and advanced economics. I uh, just returned to Episcopal this year. I taught at Episcopal from 2001 to 2007. And then I left, taught for 7 years in California, and then went to London and taught for 5 years. And so my family and I moved back to Alexandria just this last summer.
You start there because I think that's so interesting how different Episcopal must have been to teach at just 15 years ago. Maybe talk a little bit about how different it was back then according to what you know now.
Yeah, it's funny how I think there's a lot that's really stayed the same, to be honest. And when I came back the last summer, I was actually struck by how much had not changed. Obviously, the buildings totally different. Just the athletic facilities are off the charts, and I think just as a teacher, probably the biggest thing that's changed has just been the use of technology. So I left before the iPhone was around, and I can remember when I was at Episcopal before, there were all the teachers were just kind of nervous about letting students access the internet in class, um, and of course now it's about how we're going to leverage technology and use technology. So that part's really changed, and just that there's so much connected to technology that that you really wouldn't think about. I think when I was at Episcopal before, really the only option for getting food delivered at night was Papa John's pizza, and at least pre-COVID,
Right.
you could pretty much get anything you wanted delivered up until 11 o'clock. So I think if there's one thing that's a little different that I've noticed is, and I think it connects to technology, is that I feel like students are a little bit less reliant on faculty members now than they might have been before. I mean, I can remember before a lot of students they'd ask me for rides to go to places or kind of beg to go get food at a certain place. And of course now, I say now as pre-COVID, you can get Uber, you can get food delivered. So, but at the same time, I think I can just remember having a really great relationships with students before, and that part has not changed.
I heard that like a couple years ago, it used to just be that they'd have taxis like line up along the front circle. Is that true?
I do remember on Friday and Saturday nights. I can remember, and also the North Quaker entrance was that was more of a main entrance than it is now. And I can remember on Friday and Saturday nights, just big yellow taxis lined up along the front drive to take people places. And
Honestly, that's so much easier though, because now, like, when I mean now, pre-COVID, all the Ubers just get lost in the seminary. It's
right.
it's such an ordeal.
I know. Yeah, there's that on their maps. It shows that you can go from the seminary into campus, and that happens every time I try to get something delivered here. It's the delivery truck gets lost in the seminary.
It's definitely the adventure, especially like on a cold winter night when you have to track it down to the seminary, and might be breaking a major school rule by leaving campus, but sometimes you got no choice but to go to the seminary. But well, that's great. Obviously, you know me because I've been in your economics class this year, but some people might not know that you're an economics teacher, and very, in my opinion, very knowledgeable on the subject. So looking at, our situation that we're in now, which is certainly dire, what are your positive outlooks on this current epidemic?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because I think I'm sure other people have fallen into the same experience I've had, which is the second you get online and you look at the news, it's just so easy to feel like everything's crashing in and that there's really no hope. Um, but if you look back at the economic history of the United States, that this is a country that has certainly dealt with adversity before, and that the U.S. economy has been one that has been really resilient. I think a lot of that is just the amount of innovation that exists in the United States, and that you know, I think my hope is that that's what's going to eventually help the economy to rebound, that um, people who have, for example, people who might be laid off, unemployed, they're going to say, well, I've got to acquire some new skills. I've got to learn to do something different. And then they'll be able to line those skills up with new emerging industries. Because I think, I've, I've had some alumni who've done some videos for my 10th graders, and certainly one theme I've seen is that that the economy, although it is really taken some massive hits, has changed so quickly to deal with these new demands. And so my hope is that people will take advantage of this opportunity to provide new goods and services, and that the economy will be able to adapt quickly to those needs. And I think, it's not all world economies are able to adapt as quickly as the U.S. economy has been able to adapt in the past. So, but yeah, we'll see. It's I think all of us right now really are sensing this profound uncertainty, and what's certainly unique about that in my lifetime is that I can remember when bad things happened in the past, you could sort of point to an older person and say, hey, isn't this similar to something you've been through? And I just don't think, you're hard pressed to find anyone alive who can say, yeah, I've lived through a pandemic that totally ravaged the economy. And this is so new for us, and we just don't really know how this is going to turn out. But yeah, I think I just kind of emphasize just that idea of innovation and just the adaptability of the U.S. economy in the past.
Something that you do know about, and you talked a little bit about to our class before, was another time that the United States felt very uncertain, and that was 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
You were at Episcopal on September 11th, 2001, and I thought it'd be really interesting for people to hear what it was like at Episcopal then, compared to what it was like when we had to deal with this current emergency.
Yeah, that's it's kind of funny because it was yeah, I was like in my third or fourth day of teaching at Episcopal. It was my first year, and so I was just I wanted to do a really good job, and I was very earnest. And after my first period class, um, it was a Tuesday, and back then Tuesdays had long blocks, and so there were like 10 minutes of time to change classes. Students came in and said, did you see a plane flew into the World Trade Center? And so we had TVs in the classroom. We turned the TV on and just saw that there was smoke from one of the towers. And then I was kind of panicked, and I realized, okay, I gotta start teaching class again. I turned off the TV. I thought it was just kind of it must have been some accident. And about 10 minutes into the second class, I heard this loud boom, and I'll never forget looking out the window and seeing birds just taking off. And about 4 minutes later, a teacher came in and said, we're all going to the chapel right now. Something's happened. And so as we were walking to the chapel, I'll never forget looking up, and there were F-15 fighter jets scrambling overhead. And of course, no one really knew what was going on. And we kind of huddled in the chapel for, I don't know, maybe an hour. And then the administrators decided the best thing to do would be to just kind of go through a normal class day. So we all went back to class. And again, this is pre-iPhone. And I had a free period, and I went up on the, third floor bridge between Hummel and the English classrooms. And I was trying to call my wife, and I couldn't get through because all the lines were jammed. Eventually I was able to email her, but yeah, we just went through a normal class day, and people knew that all the other schools in the area were letting out. And so I think we were, Madeira and Episcopal were probably the only two schools that were even still in session. But I'll never forget that night. I was living in DC at the time, so I had to drive back home in the evening, and I got on to 395 and I looked in my rearview mirror, and there wasn't a single car on the road. And I went into DC, and there were tanks in the bridge going into Georgetown Key Bridge. So, I guess we were all, there was a lot of uncertainty, but it was very, very quickly, it was clear who had attacked the United States. And pretty quickly you sort of realized, well, what needed to be done. I think there was a lot of uncertainty because people were worried that there could be other attacks. So the school was prepared for some sort of terrorist attack in DC, but there was never any, as far as I know, there was never any thought about sending people home. And of course, with the pandemic, it's just, the problem is having people together, and it's sort of this invisible force that we can't even see. So it's just to me, it feels really different because I don't know, with 9/11, there was a concrete enemy, and you kind of knew that something needed to be done about that. And with the pandemic, it's just, I mean, I'm sure you're feeling the same uncertainty in terms of will you go to college in September or August, and it's just, I think that part is so new and so different than living through 9/11.
It's crazy how much that event, how much talk and how much history was made in that event that, had killed, 2,000 people. And this pandemic is killing 2,000 a day. So I'm, really excited for, the time when things get better. I definitely think that no one's going to take anything for granted anymore, especially people who, had to leave Episcopal early but can come back. I think that Episcopal will definitely be a better place at the end of this, as well as the world. So that is something that definitely I'm looking forward to in these, coming months or years.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's, I mean, I've seen this with the 10th graders whom I teach, that they really have kind of expressed this idea that they didn't fully appreciate everything they had at Episcopal while they were here. And that, I think we all really miss that lifestyle we had, and just not knowing when we can resume that is one of the more difficult parts of this whole experience. So yeah, I'm like you, very hopeful that the curve will not only be flattened, but
Go down.
eliminated. Yeah. And that we can at least kind of resume some semblance of normal lives or pre-COVID lives in the not so distant future. Mm-hmm.
That's all the questions I have. Is there anything else that you want to say out to the world about Episcopal, your life, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, as a member of the faculty, I think that Sal that said this to your economics class, that I just, the faculty members just really deeply miss the students. And we're just, hearts go out to the class of 2020. We're all just so looking forward to that day when we can actually have a real graduation and celebrate your accomplishments in person. I think we all have promised that that's going to happen. It could be 3 months from now, it could be a year from now, but it will definitely happen. So just hope everybody's staying well, and hope that everybody's taking care. And that's about it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. McGowan. I hope
Thank
to
you,
talk to
Sal.
soon. All right. Have a good day.
Okay. Yeah. Take care.
All right, that's all that we have for today. Thank you again for tuning in to Sal's Pandemic Externship Podcast, or SPEP, and hopefully I'll see you next time. God bless the high school.